Hello to all of my wonderful viewers. I'm Emmy. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Today I was, just thinking and I was wondering about how some people in our society can be so loveless. So can a loveless person ever learn to love? So I decided to do some research to why, some people become, hateful, narcissistic, manipulative individuals. What causes them to become, transform into these cruel types of individuals? And according to the article I read, it depends on how people are raised. In some societies, believe it or not, people are taught to frown upon romantic relationships. So from a young age, they're taught to view a romantic relationship as something negative, to not fall in love, to not trust your partner. So they are raised in environments where the mom and the dad, they do not trust one another. And also, in-laws are involved. That's what the children grow up with. They see their parents being cruel to one another, cold. Oftentimes, there is like Stockholm or Stockholm syndrome involved. Stockholm syndrome defines as a condition where the victim grows to love his or her abuser. So in these types of situations, the mother, in many cases, she's often being abused by the dad. In some cases, the father is being abused. And the children are seeing that. And of course, the children are also victims of abuse. So they grow up to love their abusive parents. And in many cases, in some situations, in these types of environments, people are encouraged to marry somebody who's a relative because they do not have any trust for anyone else. Sadly, when people are raised to be loveless, they become manipulative, they become narcissistic, and they learn how to gaslight others because for them, they only want to use people for their own benefits. They are not interested in a loving type of a relationship since they don't know what love is. They do not know. They were not raised with love. So what do you do when you meet a person who is loveless? Like, when a loving person gets involved with a loveless person, what happens? As I had stated, many of these individuals who are raised in a loveless environment, they were conditioned not to love, but only to use others. So at the beginning of the relationship, many of these loveless people, they are very charming, they are wonderful, they're at their best behavior because they're after something. They want something from their victim. Unfortunately, many individuals who grew up in loving households and environments, they fall in love with this loveless person who can never love them. And unfortunately, over time, once the loveless person gets what he or she was after, they start to become abusive towards the loving individual. They begin to manipulate the situation, put all the blame on the loving person, try to gaslight the person, and do whatever they can in their power to cause harm to the loving person. All the while, the loving person is, shocked. Like, what happened? What did I do wrong? Why isn't he or she caring for me anymore. I did everything right. I was a loyal partner. I was a loving and caring partner. What happened? But they do not realize that the person that they fell in love with is a loveless person, an individual who does not know, and in many cases they will never know what love is, because they grew up in an environment where they were taught only to use others, never to love, because love caused them harm. If you love too much, you become vulnerable, and others can use you. That's how they were conditioned. That's how they grew up. So these people became very insensitive to other people's feelings. They didn't really care. So it doesn't matter how much a loving person loves a loveless person. The loveless person, in many cases, they will never return that love, because they don't know what love is. And unfortunately, there are many people in our society who are like that. So can a loveless person ever learn to love? In some cases, some people, they realize that, perhaps the way they were raised was not, healthy or normal. And then they go and get some, counseling or psychological help. And in many cases, they learn to become loving people. However, in most cases, people consider their lifestyles as something normal. And therefore they can never learn to love, because, the way they were raised to not trust anyone, especially, romantic partners, that stays with them. So what do you do if you are in this type of a situation? First of all, there is nothing wrong with loving another person, no matter who they are. So don't ever regret loving someone. That's a gift from God, to be able to love and care for others. So do not feel ashamed of loving anyone. You should be proud and consider yourself lucky that you were raised in an environment where you learned to love and care for others. And also you need to realize that no matter how much you love the loveless person, they will never return that love back to you, because they don't know how to love. So it's not your fault. Their negative actions, their narcissistic behavior, sometimes they ghost you, or they try to abandon. That's not your fault. It's just how they were raised. They're not like you. And so, and for people who are looking for a partner, you need to be aware of this, that there are loveless type of people out there. They don't care about other people's feelings. The only reason they get involved in a relationship, in a romantic relationship with somebody, is to use them. Therefore, before getting involved in a relationship with someone, you have to get to know them really well. Ask them some questions about their family and, their background. So for the people who are not in a relationship and they are looking for a potential partner, you just need to be aware of this, that there are some heartless people out there, both men and women, who are only after something when it comes to a romantic relationship. They're loveless. They can never learn to love. So, they just want to get involved in a romantic relationship only to use the person for their own selfish benefits. Once they've achieved their objective, then they're gonna just, ghost you or leave you or blame you. And like I said, many of these people have narcissistic behaviors. They're gaslighters, they're manipulative. So they just, they keep you hanging. You don't know what you did wrong because you didn't do anything wrong, but they want to put the blame on you. They want to make you look like the bad person. When it comes to, finding a spouse or a partner, it's crucial that you find someone who is loving like you, who knows what love is, in order for him or her to be able to love you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Please share your comments, questions, and suggestions, and let me know what you think. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. God bless.